As we all know, Pokemon Sword and Shield are easy. But exactly how easy? Easy enough to be beaten using one of the weakest attacks in the game? That's what I intended to find out. Now, I know what you're thinking. If Pokemon were real, I couldn't go near a power plant because all the Magnemite would get stuck to my buns of steel. And you're wrong, I wanted to do this on Pokemon Shield because of Allister. You see, Allister is a Ghost-type gym leader and Ghosts are immune to normal moves like Tackle. Would this mean the challenge is over before it begins? Nope, luckily there's a way around this, the ability Scrappy, which allows normal moves to hit Ghost types. Unfortunately, there's only 3 Pokemon that can learn both Tackle and Scrappy, and only one of those can actually be caught in the main game. That's where a potential problem arose. I spent $40 on the expansion pass, but I spent that $40 on the Pokemon Sword expansion pass, not the Shield one. And because Nintendo wants to milk everyone dry like a milk tank, you have to buy both passes to access the DLC in both games. Well, I wasn't about to give Nintendo more money, so I decided on transferring a Pancham I caught in Shield over to Sword, giving it Scrappy and sending it back, thus saving me both time and money. Sure, this would leave me with just a single Scrappy Pokemon to deal with Allister, but that would be a problem for future me. Anyways, with a shaky plan in place, I started my adventure. After helping Leon walk in a straight line, the decision of my starter Pokemon was presented. Since Scorbunny is the only one who knows Tackle, the choice was made for me. Then it's the first rival battle against Galarian How. The whole point of the fight is to level up your Pokemon, learn a stab move, and destroy their starter. Well, I'm only using Tackle, so just like in real life, learning new things is useless. For the battle itself, Hop's Wooloo decided to get a critical hit, then his Grookey brought me down to 1 HP. It was super stressful, but Bunfire's the best and managed to carry me through. I didn't do any resetting, so Bunfire's nature is hasty, which increases its speed and decreases its defense. Not good, not terrible. First up in the tale of my legend, I let a wolf have its way with me in the woods. Then my mom let me, a 10-year-old, travel the world without any supervision. And she didn't bother to make sure I wasn't traumatized after the previous incident of passing out in a creepy forest. I then caught my first 2 eligible Pokemon for this challenge, a Skwovet called Squirtail and a Wooloo called Uwu. Their natures weren't great, but Ash never threw away a Pokemon, so neither did I. Though Paul threw away his Pokemon and won on like a 5-battle winning streak against Ash. Whatever, soon after a Zigzagoon named Ratgoon joined the squad. Not that it really mattered, Bunfire was bodying everybody, including Hop again. After catching a Choodle named Charlie, short for Charlie Brown, and a Yamper called Bolthound, my full team of 6 was complete. I then entered the wild area and set off in search of my secret weapon for the entire run, Pancham. I quickly caught one and tucked Peter Pancham safely into a box. His time would come soon enough. But at this early juncture in the challenge, I was naive and thought I'd treat it like a Nuzlocke. As in, when somebody's knocked out, they're gone forever. I quickly learned that that wasn't going to be possible. Until I came to this realization, my original 6 was what I was going with. So on I went. I clapped Hop's cheeks again, even after he used Growl a bunch of times and a potion. One benefit of this battle is I realized how good my normal type Pokemon will be since they get Stab Tackle. And Uwu takes half damage from direct attacks, making it a potential sleeper MVP. On Route 3 though, I ran into this little idiot with a Pancham. She used Circle Throw to bring out my Squirtail and knocked it out. It was my first loss of the challenge, and that's when I started to realize a Nuzlocke approach was a terrible idea. Regardless, Skwovet was out and Pancham was in. My 100th tackle came while knocking out this Purloin. Coincidentally, it's the same battle that led to Bunfire evolving into Raboot. After catching a roly-coly called Hot Wheels and struggling against a Roggenrola and Galarmine, I decided I needed to give my team a boost. So I went back to Moto-Stoked and grabbed a Silk Scarf, which increases the attack power of normal moves. I also went out and caught some Trubbish since they have a 5% chance of having a Silk Scarf. Of course, I only caught 3 after 10 minutes and none of them had the scarf. So I released all of them and continued through the mine, Raboot wearing the scarf. After surviving a Woobat that knew Confusion, Endeavor, and Attract, I made it to the first battle against Bidet. It would have been a clean sweep with Bunfire except Solosis used Endeavor. That move is going to be a real pain if everyone uses it. So I switched into Uwu and it didn't do very much after being tickled. Then I swapped to my secret weapon in unclogging this Bidet, Ratgoon. Well, it would have been if they hadn't lowered my stats so heavily with Tickle. The switching train kept rolling into the Charlie Station, who finished off Gothita, then fell to Hatena. After Ratgoon sealed the win, it was on to Turffield with Milo directly in my crosshairs. Armed with a level 20 Bunfire, I entered the gym. I figured resisting grass would be the best way to start, but Gossifleur took 4 hits to go down. Captain Noseless then went to his last Pokemon, Eldegoss. Knowing it would Dynamax and I couldn't, I sent out Bolthound to soak up some hits. Maybe Uwu would have been smarter since it has higher defense, but I favored Stab Tackle over Thunderdog. After Bolthound went down in 2 hits, I had a tough choice. Send out Uwu now to try and survive a hit or go directly into Bunfire. I went with the sheep. I shouldn't have gone with the sheep. Eldegoss proceeded to wipe the rest of my team. The good news is that I learned a lot. The bad news is that after 208 tackles, I suffered my first defeat. Clearly entering a gym with underleveled Pokemon that can only use a move with 40 base power was a terrible strategy. So I went and caught a Slowpoke called Smoothbrain, a Bunnelby called Bunfury, a Roggenrola called Geobro, a Tyrode called Hitmonreeves, and a Hoothoot called Hooters. Then I was off to destroy 100 Tyrode to boost the attack EV of all my Pokemon. That was super fun and not boring at all. It was around killing my 50th Tyrode with my 300th tackle and barely getting any experience that I knew I'd have to change my approach. No Dynamaxing would be a tough hurdle, because when you Dynamax, tackle turns into Max Strike. That's not tackle, so I had to get stronger. But naive me didn't want to overlevel my Pokemon, trying to keep it within 5 levels of the next gym leader. During this time of deep contemplation, Raccoon evolved and so did Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels has the amazing Flame Body ability, so it will almost always be leading the way. Raccoon, however, will probably be my first choice to get knocked out. Then again, it does have Stab Tackle. With my team now supersized like a Happy Meal, I rematched against Milo. While his Gossifleur never used Endeavor, Flame Body never actually activated, whittling Hot Wheels' HP down to a point where I couldn't leave it in there against Eldegoss. So I sent out Raccoon to take one for the team. And by take one for the team, I mean die. Which it did in 2 moves. The rest of my team now safe, Bunfire was able to avenge Raccoon with 5 tackles, securing my first gym badge. Because I was still in the Nuzlocke headspace, I replaced our fallen comrade with Hitmonreeves, who I hoped would eventually evolve into Hitmonlee. On my way to fight Nessa, I met some Team Yell Grunts on a bridge. Since I decided to mostly wing this challenge with very little research, I didn't know that the second grunt had a Sableye. Guess what Sableye is immune to? If you guessed Tackle, you're right. I thought this would happen only once I got to Allister. Clearly I was wrong. So I reverted back to my previous save about 10 minutes ago, sent Peter Pancham off to summer camp, and he came back with a deeper voice and a thin mustache. This time, that smug Sableye was no match for my Kung Fu Panda, even after the stupid thing used Disable a million times. After overcoming my first ghost type, I let this doctor put his fingers inside me, and as a reward he gave me a bite. Instead of letting me enjoy my newfound freedom though, Hop demanded another battle. I showed no mercy. Coincidentally, my 420th tackle was launched by Bunfire against Iswaki. Around this time, I decided to do some special training ahead of Nessa. I've beaten Sword and Shield several times, but it's still crazy to me that you literally face Nessa immediately after Milo. Looking back at Gen 1, there's not only a giant route, but also a mountain between Pewter and Cerulean City. Here, not so much, meaning I had to battle a lot of wild Pokemon to earn experience. During this time, I finally realized I wasn't enjoying myself. The permadeath clause was just too much for me to overcome. I had no way of dealing with Dynamax Pokemon, meaning I was guaranteed to lose at least 1 Pokemon per gym leader. If this was a Nuzlocke, I'd at least have access to Dynamaxing or moves like Protect. With this challenge, all I had was Tackle. So with my current team in tow, I headed off to Nessa, holding everyone close and telling them I wouldn't let them go. Unless they underperformed and a better Pokemon came along. I cleared the beginning portion of Nessa's gym, reaching 500 tackles in the process. How many times do you think I'll use Tackle to beat Pokemon Shield? I'm at 500 at the second gym. Does that mean I'll be over 2,000 by the time I beat Leon? Leave your guesses in the comments below. Based on how tough the late game is going to be against Team Every Rose Has Its Thorn and their metal Pokemon, I'd be surprised if I finish under 2,500. While I made my way to Nessa, Uwu evolved into Double and Bolthound evolved into Boltund. First up for Nessa was Goldeen, who Boltund handled easily. Bolthound then beat off Arrokuda, which meant the main challenge was about to begin. And I immediately regretted leaving Bolthound in there. I should have let Bunfire and Hot Wheels take the Dynamax hits, but with Dreadnought resisting Tackle, I knew no real strategy would help. With my 2 fire types knocked out, I turned to Uwu. Even with its ability and stab, it barely made a dent in Dreadnought before it wiped my entire team. Time for more grinding. While I was doing that, Hitmonreeves evolved into Hitmonchan, not Hitmonlee. Yeah, I made a mistake there. Oh well, Hitmonchan's cooler anyways. With everyone a few levels higher, I went for a rematch against Nessa. My strategy this time was to do the same thing as last time. Send out Bolthound to deal with her first 2 Pokemon, then sacrifice my Fire Boys against Dreadnought. Things went according to plan, and it seemed like Uwu would win a head-to-head against Dreadnought. But then the stupid thing lowered my defense 3 times with Razor Shell. It was now up to Hitmonreeves and Peter. For whatever reason, Nessa stopped using Razor Shell altogether, Lax Incense allowed me to dodge a couple of hits, and Peter dealt the final blow. Nessa was defeated, resistance be damned. After eating some fish Pokemon with a guy who definitely won't turn evil, I wiped the floor with Bidet, had a Scrapper with a Copper, got Shirty with Marnie in a very windy Shadow Realm, and entered the Motostoke Gym to face Kabu. As reliable as Uwu had been up to this point, its ability meant that it received double damage from fire moves, so I knew it would be my sacrificial lamb against Gigantamax Centiskorch. With everyone, including myself, saying how easy Sword and Shield is, it's easy to forget how tough Kabu is. He has a Ninetales and an Arcanine, then throws Centiskorch at you for the finale. I knew going in that a loss was almost assured, but I still gave it my best shot with a team that probably should have been a few levels higher. I decided to save my heavy hitters for last and lead with Keanu. Kabu's Ninetales hit a Will-O-Wisp turn 1 and absolutely wrecked me. He repeated that strategy with Peter. While Lax Incense helped me avoid Ember and Fire Spin, Will-O-Wisp had 100% accuracy. If you don't know, Burn lowers your physical attack by half. Tackle is a physical attack. Yeah, not great. Ninetales KO'd 2 Pokemon before Hot Wheels cleaned it up. Try and burn that, Kabu. Well, he didn't have to. Arcanine has Intimidate, which sucks, lowering physical attack. Oh, and Bite can cause flinching. Just wonderful things all around. With Hot Wheels done for, I went to Uwu and Kabu hit another freaking Will-O-Wisp. But even with a burn, Uwu still only needed 2 hits to finish it off. That meant Centiskorch. Unfortunately, Uwu only survived 1 hit, not 2. Bolthound was up next and I hoped it could survive a G-Max Centiferno. Instead, Kabu went for a G-Max Flutterby for some reason. Bolthound survived but fell the next turn. It was all up to Bunfire, who had a Shell Bell for HP recovery instead of a Lax Incense for dodge. Would I regret this decision? Nope, I'm a Pokemon master. Every decision I make is the right one. Somehow, I beat Kabu on my first attempt and earned the Fire Badge. He then sang me the world's worst song and I was off to the wild area again. I probably should have caught some new Pokemon like Snorlax and Beware to strengthen my team, but my current group had given me no reason to doubt them. So onward we went to the biggest challenge of this challenge. With Allister being a Ghost-type gym leader, it would be all up to Peter, who evolved into Pangoro along the way. Since Pangoro resists Ghost, I figured this would be a doable battle, even if it was my only attacker. If I was wrong, I'd have to give Nintendo $40 to get more scrappy Pokemon from the expansion pass. Failure was not an option. This is also the time to post your guesses in the comments for how many attempts you think it'll take me to destroy Allister. While making my way through the trainers ahead of Allister, Bunfire evolved into Cinderace and learned nothing. Because this is a tackle-only challenge, I don't teach my Pokemon new moves. Also, something I was worried about reared its ugly head, Peter's PP. He only had 9 PP left on Tackle and I only had 1 PP recovery item in my possession. Knowing I'd run out of Tackle and have to restart anyways, I challenged Allister. That's when disaster struck. Yamask has the Wandering Spirit ability. If I touch it, Yamask swaps abilities with the Pokemon who hit it, so I had to switch out. Thankfully, Wandering Spirit only activates once because Yamask takes Peter's Scrappy and that's useless for them. Still, it needed 4 Tackles to go down. And a few hits into Mimikyu, I ran out of PP and decided to restart for some reason instead of getting wiped out. If I did my math correctly, I'll need nearly every single PP on Tackle just to beat Allister, which meant more training. Several things happened while getting Peter to level 36. Bunfire re-evolved, Hot Wheels evolved into Colossal, I used the PP up to raise Peter's Tackle to 42 PP, gave her Soak Scarf, and I crossed 1,000 total tackles. After clearing all the gym trainers again, I got to Allister with 24 PP remaining on Tackle. I figured I was still under leveled for this matchup, so I just went for it without using an Ether. This time around, Hot Wheels would be my go-to for switching because there was a chance Flame Body activated. Yamask went down, then it was time for Mimikyu. Allister's Mimikyu will always take reduced damage from the first tackle because of Disguise, but it eventually fainted, leaving Peter at just 51 HP. The good news about Cursula is that it has weak armor, reducing its defense every time it's hit by an attack. The bad news is that it knows Curse. Curse lowers Cursula's HP by a lot, but in exchange, Peter loses HP every single turn. Even with my attempts to stall and hope they use Curse again, Peter went down. That's when something interesting happened. Cursula only knows Curse, Hex, and Ancient Power. Ancient Power has just 5 PP, so when that runs out, it basically has to use Curse against Uwu since Hex does nothing. My strategy for the next rematch was coming into focus. Gengar would still be a massive problem, but if I could get there with enough HP on Peter, maybe I had a chance. I immediately battled Allister again. Since he wiped out my entire team, I could re-battle him without going through the gym challenge again, which meant my PP was safe. Things started off great. Yamask only took 7 HP from Peter, and Mimikyu only used 1 slash on top of several Hone Claws and Baby Doll Eyes. Against Cursula, I left Peter in to switch out into Uwu, hoping to bait a curse. It worked. I then used a bunch of switching to either drain Ancient Power or force Cursula to use Curse again. The best course of action turned out to be switching between Uwu and Keanu, since Keanu resisted Ancient Power and Uwu was immune to Hex. After a bit, Cursula finally used Curse and KO'd itself. But I lost Uwu in the process because I miscalculated the size of Cursula's PP. Regardless, Peter would at least square off against a non-Gigantamax Gengar, and that was progress. Gengar proved to be a horrific challenge though. It never used Payback against Hot Wheels, it knows Hypnosis and can raise its special attack while Dynamaxed. Oh, and it has access to Venoshock that can deal massive damage to Peter. The good news is that Peter can KO Gengar in only 3 hits. I just needed to survive long enough to get those 3 hits in. Unlike Alinity's OnlyFans, this would be no easy feat. For attempt number 4, I realized a lot of my success will hinge on the Mimikyu fight. If I go into Hot Wheels and hope for a burn, Mimikyu could use Hone Claws to maximize its attack while I do nothing and ruin everything. But if I go for a quick KO with Peter, they might use Slash or Shadow Sneak. Making it to Gengar with as much HP as possible was the only way to win, so I'd have to get lucky against Mimikyu. In this battle, it used Slash and Baby Doll Eyes, making switching my only option. Right on Cubone, Mimikyu used Hone Claws, so I switched back to Peter. So of course it used Slash and brought Peter down to 62 HP, not nearly enough to beat Gengar. For attempt number 5, Mimikyu spammed Baby Doll Eyes and kept landing critical hits with Slash, and Gengar destroyed me shortly after. For attempt number 6, Mimikyu left Peter at 67 HP, which still wasn't enough. For attempt number 7, I went with Lax Incense on Peter. It paid off on the first attack of the game when Yamask missed Hex. Am I secretly an idiot? No, it's the game who is wrong. Anyways, Mimikyu only got off 1 Slash and Peter had 87 hit points left. By far my best yet. Cursula's a cakewalk, so that left Gengar. Gengar doesn't have a reliable pattern that I could see, so I just had to hope that it hit Hot Wheels with Payback and missed Peter with everything. Again, Lax Incense was the MVP and Gengar missed Hypnosis. But that's when I learned Gengar's ability is Curse Body and it disabled Tackle. I don't know what I did to deserve all these setbacks. Was it my past tweets about how bad Pokemon TCG Live is? Clearly I did something to somebody because the next Hypnosis hit and Peter went down. For attempt number 8, I was 1 level higher with everybody. Peter still had to 3-shot Yamask, but thanks to Lax Incense he never took a hit in return. Baby Doll Eyes is the worst way for Mimikyu to start, and spamming 3 Slash immediately after is even worse. Luckily, the 3rd Slash missed, and Peter got a crit to take a quick knockout. I've got Cursula down to a science now. I leave Peter in at first, switch into Uwu, then bounce between Uwu and Keanu until Cursula KOs itself. For Gengar, it always seems to rotate between Max Darkness, G-Max Terra, and Max Ooze. Ivan Ooze is the worst since it raises Gengar's special attack. Everything else is fine. When I sent out Peter, Gengar missed Hypnosis and my first tackle was a crit, but Curse Body disabled Tackle. Now I had to bounce between Pokemon until Bolthound got knocked out. This could be it. With a crit, Gengar will be knocked out. Instead, it used Hypnosis and I fell asleep. Peter didn't wake up, Gengar used a crit Venoshock and I was at 14 HP. But then Peter woke up. If Gengar connected with an attack, I'd lose. This was it. I could do this. And it hit me with Venoshock. For attempt number 9, Mimikyu decided to be a butt face and used Slash 3 times, so I was all prepared for Gengar to send me to attempt number 10. But then something magical happened. It missed Hypnosis twice, and Curse Body didn't activate on the first tackle. After switching back in, all I had to do was survive a Venoshock. And I did with 11 HP, dealing the final blow immediately after. See? Pokemon Master. I was able to beat Allister in under double-digit attempts. Sure, it took over 200 tackles and a couple hours to finally get there, but I got there. I just hoped I wouldn't have to face Allister again in the tournament at the end of the game. Allister behind me, I made my way to Ballonlea. I figured I'd be overpowered for the rest of the game, and I was right. Opal's Pokemon were as brittle as her bones. Okay, not actually, I just wanted to use that line. Weezing managed to KO my Cinderace, but Uwu finished the job. Next up was Mawile. Since I'm mostly wanging it with this challenge, I forgot she had one. The metal typing is horrible, and to preview what's to come later on in the game against Team Will You Accept This Rose. It also used Iron Defense several times and has access to Draining Kiss. All major problems. Luckily, Mawile only knows physical moves and it activated Flame Body, making my life easier. It still took forever to KO Mawile, but I didn't lose anybody in the process. I figured Bolthound was the best option against Togekiss, and it would have been if not for Draining Kiss. So it was the same sequence as with Mawile, just faster. Activate Flame Body, then whittle down its HP. I made it to Alcremie with 5 Pokemon remaining. Unfortunately, everyone was damaged except Peter. And unlike Allister, Peter is not a good option for Opal's Fairy types. Plus, G-Max Finale is an insanely powerful attack healing the user. If it wasn't for all of Opal's healing, she would have lost super easily. With the healing, she still lost to Uwu, the MVP of the gym. And I even had Hot Wheels waiting to destroy her if the time came. The battle was won on my first attempt, crossing 1,300 tackles in the process. My victory was based on a very complex strategy. I used tackle every single turn. You may have noticed that I deleted moves so they only have tackle. I got lazy and didn't do this right away, but I figured some people would question the legitimacy of this run. So this is for you. And yes, it does look super weird only having one attack. In the next battle against Hop, he starts out with a Trevenant that can heal itself with Horn Leech. I wasn't prepared for Hop to be so horny, so Peter took a hit. Then he confused me, so I swapped into Hot Wheels for a burn, which only took 4 hits. Suck on that, Hop. The rest of the battle was fairly uneventful, except for the part where I lost because Hop Snorlax Society had a crit and paralysis with Body Slam. Keanu and Bolthound were overall disappointments, and I'm thinking of swapping them. Especially Keanu, his repetitive movements give me a headache. I decided this would be their final battle. The rematch went so much better. I started Peter, Hop missed a Horn Leech, and Trevenant went down in 3 hits. Hot Wheels was my choice against Snorlax this time. It got burned early and went down easily. Boltund went down to Bolthound and Keanu thanks to Roar. Hop's Heatmore, meanwhile, is useless, and Rillaboom couldn't do anything against Hot Wheels after missing multiple drum beating. Lax Incense has really come up clutch throughout the run. Afterwards, I swapped out Keanu and Bolthound for Be Afraid the Stuffle and Tembo the Q-Font. They're upgrades in every way, and it's a miracle I kept the others on the team for as long as I did. Plus, Stuffle has the same ability as Uwu, having the damage it takes from physical attacks at the cost of being doubly weak to fire. I had no plans to change the team again, so unless something catastrophic happened, this would be the 6 I beat the game with. Of course, not long after convincing myself of that, I ran into a potential run ender with 2 trainers just ahead of Sirchester. They start off with Extradrill, who knows Dig, and Hippowdon, who kicks up a Sandstorm. Dig is 4 times effective against Colossal. After KOing Hippowdon thanks to a flinch from King's Rock, Extradrill Mystic second Dig thanks to the busted Lax Incense. After Hippowdon is Berserker. That's not any easier, but Lax Incense came up clutch again, causing Berserker's Swagger and Extradrill's Dig to miss again. Seriously, if it wasn't for Lax Incense, I would have lost so many more battles. Berserker went down, but that still left a very angry Extradrill. For whatever reason, Uwu does a ton of damage to Extradrill, and Flame Body activated when Hot Wheels got KO'd. Despite the scare, I managed to win. It was around this moment I decided to research some of the best Pokemon that can use Tackle. Hippowdon and Tyranitar have Sandstream as an ability, those are great. Gyarados has Intimidate and a great typing. Galarian Darmanitan has an ability that raises its attack. And Ferrothorn has Iron Barbs, another ability that would come in handy. Plus, my current team was all weak to fighting except Cinderace. Yeah, maybe winging it wasn't the best idea. Still, I pressed on to Melanie. I should be able to make it to Raihan without any issues, but when I get to Raihan, that's where changes might definitely need to happen. With the surprisingly easy gym mission cleared and over 1,500 tackles launched, the bouncy thick MILF sent out a Frostmoth. Continuing my strategy of not planning ahead, I saved Hot Wheels and went with Bunfire. King's Rock has a chance to cause flinching, but it seems to do it at a much lower rate than Lax Incense causes a miss, so if I lose, I know what to swap. Frostmoth lowered Bunfire's speed 3 stages and set up Hail before going down. Darmanitan was up next, so I sent out Be Afraid with its high attack and great ability. It was the perfect choice to soak up Hail damage and get Darmanitan into Zen mode. Peter has the highest attack of all my Pokemon, so she was up next. Icicle Crash is scary, but Darmanitan went for Taunt and died right after. Melanie's third Pokemon is Ice-Q, a potentially big problem. Figuring it used physical moves, I switched to Hot Wheels. It used Icy Wind. Ice-Q then created Hail and put its face back on. This is what I was worried about. Ice-Q's Ice Face completely blocks the first attack. Not a problem though, Ice-Q only knows Hail, Amnesia, Freeze Dry, and Icy Wind. Hot Wheels resists its attacks. After an annoying battle where it kept using Hail to regrow its face, Hot Wheels eventually beat the Penguin, leaving me with 5 Pokemon to battle Melanie's sweeper, Lapras. Due to its typing, Lapras is a horrible matchup for Hot Wheels and Bunfire. I just hoped Tembo would survive a hit, and it did. I was now left with a choice: sacrifice Bunfire or Hot Wheels. I cheated by looking at Melanie's team on Cerebi, and in the process I learned you should never Google Melanie lest your innocent eyes be tainted forever. Lapras is an even worse matchup for me than I thought, but for whatever reason Melanie used Icy Wind instead of Surf against Bunfire, and King's Rock finally activated the turn after. I needed a lot of luck to win this battle, and that's what was happening. Sing would still be a problem if it worked, but I was confident full health Peter and Uwu could finish off Lapras. My faith was rewarded. Peter knocked out Lapras, meaning Uwu never even got touched. Melanie was defeated on my first try. After destroying Hop again, this time thanks in large part to the hail and his insane decision to use Scary Face repeatedly with Corviknight instead of Drill Peck, I biked past the snowy beach filled with crazy people in swimwear and arrived in Galarian Po Town. Marnie snuck me away for some alone time where I beat her butt, mostly because she literally never attacked and just used status moves. It was a risky strategy that didn't come close to paying off. Then it was time to enter Spikemouth just shy of 1700 tackles. While the previous gym had you dodging pitfalls and using the Switch's Rumble feature to make it through, Spikemouth forces you to do the arduous task of walking in a straight line. I somehow managed to survive that terrifying ordeal and made it to Piers after using a whopping 17 tackles to clear the gym mission. The battle with Piers began and I sent out Cinderace versus Scrafty. Yeah, that fighting weakness to nearly all of my Pokemon is a huge problem, but I believe in them. Intimidate sucked, so did Sand Attack. I lost my ace way too soon. But like Ash losing Charizard right away against Brandon, I knew there was still hope. Uwu took 2 Brick Breaks to the face like a champ and got the KO. Piers decided to flex on me and go directly into Obstagoon, so I went with Hot Wheels. The high defense of Obstagoon would have been a problem if not for Flame Body activating right away. I got Hot Wheels out of there and used Tembo as a buffer. Tembo got knocked out, and since Peter is my sweeper, Be Afraid was next. Turns out Be Afraid is insane against Obstagoon and easily finished it off. I switched into Peter for Malamar since it's immune to Psychic. It was a great choice because Malamar is faster, meaning Payback barely does anything. Malamar's other moves sucked, so that was a quick win. Finally, it was Skuntank. Toxic would be a huge problem if the battle was prolonged. Luckily, Peter hits super hard and Lax Incense always comes up clutch. So the battle was over before it even began and I earned my 7th badge on my first attempt. Outside of Allister, beating Pokemon Shield with Tackle has been disappointingly easy. If I'd gone with Pokemon Sword, I'd have breezed up until this point. After Leon took down some rampaging Dynamax Pokemon off screen, I came face to face with another potential run-ender, Gentleman Caden, the absolute scum of the earth. He sent out Doublade, a ghost metal type that knows Aerial Ace. Peter is not good here, so I had to do some shenanigans to get Flame Body to activate. When it finally worked, I went back into Peter, who hung in the fight thanks to Doublade's reduced attack power, but eventually fell. Next up is Passimian. Not easy, though I was able to win. What I failed to realize going in is that Caden's third Pokemon is Poltegeist. That meant Peter would have to survive 2 ghost types, meaning my strategy would have to change up to include that. So I rebattled Caden for, yes, the 3rd time. Instead of using Doublade's Aerial Ace like he should have against Peter, Caden decided Iron Head is much smarter. Apparently the AI is turned up to 11 with this guy. He also used some voodoo magic to get Hot Wheels down to a quarter health before Flame Body finally activated. After that, I let Tembo get knocked out before using Uwu to stall and KO the most annoying trainer Pokemon so far. Passimian was a breeze and Poltegeist is a pushover, so Caden's reign of terror was finally ended. Yeah, ghost types are not fun, and I really hope I don't run into Allister in the finals. Without wasting any time, I traveled to Hammerlock and began the gym mission. This was always going to be a challenge, but I figured why not go for it and see what happens. Well, I should have done more research. Because while I spent all my prep for this video figuring out how to deal with Allister, I was ignorant to the fact that Raihan was the true final boss of this challenge. Allister took 9 attempts. How many do you think Raihan will need? Everyone at least at level 50, I started by hitting Raihan's Flygon and he retaliated with Breaking Swipe, which lowers my attack, and Gigalith Stealth Rock, which is horrible. I was already planning my rebattle strategy with Hot Wheels going up front and either Tembo or Bunfire. But for this battle, I did manage to KO Flygon after a few hits. Gigalith resists tackle, and because of Breaking Swipe, my attack was lowered. While I had the chance, I switched my attention to Sandaconda. Duraludon would be a massive problem later, so I figured trying to KO both Sandaconda and Gigalith at the same time would be a smart move. It was not. Sandaconda sets up a Sandstorm if it gets hit, and Gigalith is proving to be more of a beast than I anticipated. Body Press exploits my team's fighting weakness, and I don't really have a way around it. I lost my first battle against Raihan and didn't even make it to Duraludon. For the rematch, I led with Hot Wheels and Peter wearing safety goggles. If I can get a lucky Flame Body, maybe Gigalith will be neutralized. If not, I might have to make some changes to my team. Or, I could just overlevel my team using the easily obtainable in-game items, but I don't want to win the way Game Freak intends. I want to win the hard way. Even with this strategy, everything went to crap. Flygon was able to use Breaking Swipe 4 times before Flame Body activated, and Gigalith takes 20 tackles to get knocked out as a result. Clearly without a burn, I can't win. And when Hot Wheels went down early, the writing was on the wall. Uwu and Be Afraid were able to do the bulk of the damage this time, so maybe there's something there? But the more I look at things, the worse they get. Flygon lowers my attack every turn, but the damage it deals after a burn is barely anything. I can't split my focus though, so it really is going to come down to Flame Body. And to make matters worse, Sandaconda has Glare for paralysis as well as Protect. Oh, and if I touch it, a Sandstorm is summoned. I knew Raihan would be tough, I just didn't realize how much. I decided to learn the definition of Insanity and go directly to attempt number 3, hoping that Flame Body activated early. Uwu's first tackle did a decent chunk of damage and Flame Body worked right away on Flygon, but not Gigalith. I was tempted to switch Hot Wheels out since Gigalith didn't set up Stealth Rock, but that would mean a free hit on somebody. I'm glad I didn't switch because Flame Body finally activated on Gigalith's Killing Blow. Now was my chance. I went with Bunfire. It dodged a Breaking Swipe and survived a Rock Blast. Raihan targeted Uwu the following turn, meaning I managed to KO Gigalith at just the cost of 1 Pokemon. Raihan targeted Uwu the following turn, meaning I managed to KO Gigalith at the cost of just 1 Pokemon. But Bunfire and Uwu were critically hurt, their attack stats in the toilet. I would also have to hit into Sandaconda, thus reactivating Sandstorm. It's like Raihan's entire team is designed to destroy someone only allowed to use Tackle who's too stubborn to switch their team. Because Sandaconda spams Protect, I have to split my attacks for the best results. That means I get to Duraludon faster, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Duraludon came out against Tembo and Be Afraid with Peter at full health in my back pocket. Did I mention that Duraludon resists Tackle? Yeah, not exactly ideal. Be Afraid survived a Max Knuckle, but in doing so, Duraludon's attack power was raised. Plus, Paralysis reared its ugly head. When the Sandstorm subsided, I switched to attacking Duraludon, except my attacks did a pitiful amount of damage. At this point, I drew a line in the Sandaconda and said I was winning with this team. It was just a matter of how many attempts it would take and how high my level would have to be. With everyone a level higher, I used the same strategy as last time. Flygon activated Flame Body on its second attack, but Gigalith set up Stealth Rock while never getting burned, sealing my fate early. For attempt number 5, Hot Wheels avoided Flygon's first 2 Breaking Swipes, which is what I don't want to happen since it means a burn will never occur. To make matters worse, Gigalith used Stealth Rock and followed it up with 2 Sand Tombs on Hot Wheels, effectively ending this battle before it even started. For attempt number 6, a Gyarados replacing Bunfire would have given me a great edge, but no, I enjoy punishing myself. And if you're still here, you enjoy watching me punish myself. A change I did make is giving Hot Wheels the Silk Scarf, Uwu the Safety Goggles, and Bunfire the Heavy Duty Boots to deal with Stealth Rock. Yeah, as you probably could have guessed, the goggles, they do nothing. After a disastrous 7th attempt the world doesn't deserve to see, I decided to go with Hot Wheels and Tembo up front for lucky number 8, as they aren't damaged by Sandstorm. I also gave Uwu the leftovers since it seems like the sheep survives the longest. As soon as the battle began, I crossed 2,000 tackles. When I did that, something very interesting happened. Instead of using Breaking Swipe, Flygon switched it up and went with Crunch for a few turns against Tembo before going back to Breaking Swipe. Apparently it hates elephants. Around that time, something magical happened. Gigalith activated Flame Body on its first attack. Unfortunately, Flygon didn't. Still, I saw this as an opportunity and focused all my attacks on Flygon, putting both of Raihan's Pokemon low and letting the Sandstorm subside before bringing in the heavy hitter, Uwu. It did massive damage to Flygon before eating a Breaking Swipe, which also activated Flame Body. Was the 8th time the charm? Well, Hot Wheels got KO'd right after, so maybe not. Still, if I could get to Raihan's final 2 Pokemon with 4 of my own, there might be a chance. Unfortunately, a dangerous choice presented itself. Gigalith was neutered due to burn, but if I hit Sandaconda, Sandstorm would come back. But if I KO Gigalith, Raihan sends out Duraludon while Sandaconda uses Glare and is annoying. I decided to hit Sandaconda and face the consequences, especially since Flygon hadn't really affected my attack by this point. Of course, Sandaconda spammed Glare and Uwu couldn't do anything while Gigalith Rock Blasted Bunfire into the Stone Age. Even with all these setbacks, I managed to KO Sandaconda and Gigalith on the same turn, which meant Duraludon wouldn't have any backup against my 3 Pokemon. This could be it. I might finally beat Raihan. Uwu survived a Max Knuckle that raised Duraludon's attack, and the Sandstorm subsided, meaning Uwu might survive a second hit. It didn't need to because Raihan went after Peter. But with Duraludon's boosted attack, its next Max Knuckle took out Uwu. Be Afraid went out as Duraludon shrunk back down to normal size. Of course it knows Breaking Swipe, which took down Peter and left Be Afraid all alone. Lax Incense would have to work its magic, otherwise that'd be it. Well, Lax Incense didn't work its magic until it was too late. Breaking Swipe lowers attack and Iron Head can cause flinching. I lost, but it was progress. At the very least, I know I can win with my team and won't need a Gyarados or Ferrothorn to bail me out. For attempt number 9, which is how long it took to beat Allister, Flame Body never activated and Tembo was KO'd from 2 body presses. Attempt number 10 marked uncharted territory against a single gym leader. And after the pitiful performance in number 9, I was beginning to rethink my assessment of my team. Raihan really does have a two-headed dragon. If I go after Flygon to try and retain my attack, Gigalith destroys me. If I go after Gigalith, Flygon lowers my attack. Even if everything goes right for those two, Sandaconda has Glare to paralyze plus Sandstorm if I touch it. Then Duraludon Gigantamaxes and raises its attack while resisting tackle. Was victory even possible? Was run number 8 just a fluke? Apparently so, because number 10 ended with none of my Pokemon in fighting shape when Duraludon hit the field. For attempt number 11, Flame Body activated right away against Flygon. But Gigalith has this nasty habit of using Body Press on Tembo instead of Hot Wheels, then spreading Stealth Rock and finishing off Tembo right after. Gigalith then used Sand Tomb, all but rendering Hot Wheels useless. I got to Sandaconda in worse shape than that month I discovered Double Stuff Oreos and Binge Survivor. When it used Protect on a turn where I double targeted it, I knew it was game over. For attempt number 12, I force-fed everybody all my experience candies, bringing them to the upper 50s. All of Raihan's Pokemon are in the upper 40s, like the women who keep swiping right on me. Getting more candy from raid battles has proven to be impossible at this stage of the game because Dynamax Pokemon are too strong, the AI partners are horrible, and Tackle just doesn't get it done. Ultimately, I lost attempt number 12 after Gigalith pressed its hard body against Tembo a couple times, and Sandaconda was a paralyzer like Finger 11. At this rate, I might be at level 70 before I win. For attempt number 13, I decided to try out a terrible idea. Starting with Uwu and Be Afraid, then switching into Hot Wheels and Tembo after a tackle or two. Not only that, I focused my attacks on Flygon since it has such low defense. Well, Gigalith used Stealth Rock for its first attack, making this a horrible decision. Hot Wheels takes a ton of damage from Stealth Rock, so if I continue this strategy, it needs the heavy-duty boots more than anything. On the bright side, Flygon did go down pretty easily. To make things even better, Flame Body activated on Gigalith the same turn Flygon fell to burn damage. I think this was the first time I'd ever had Hot Wheels face Sandaconda. On top of that, Hot Wheels dodged Sand Tomb. This was the run, I could feel it in my Q-bones. When the sandstorm subsided, I went to hitting Gigalith. But that was ruined by Sandaconda KOing Hot Wheels and not activating Flame Body, with Bunfire getting stopped in its tracks by paralysis. Just like Flygon though, Sandaconda can't really take a non-breaking swipe tackle. Saving Uwu and Be Afraid for Duraludon, I sent out Peter. This was 100% it, no way I was losing. Sandaconda would fall and I would win. Tembo continued to do massive damage to Sandaconda while Gigalith barely did anything thanks to its burn. But then I got worried about Protect and split the attacks. Tembo hit Gigalith for barely anything and Peter was paralyzed. But the following turn was a different story. Tembo dodged Earth Power and Peter survived a Body Press. Unfortunately, then Tembo dropped and the worst case scenario happened. The sandstorm subsided when Sandaconda had a sliver of HP left. I had to do it. I hit Sandaconda and reactivated Sandstorm. Thankfully, both Sandaconda and Gigalith dropped the same turn. It was Duraludon alone. If it hit Peter with Max Knuckle, I might have a chance. Of course, it hit Be Afraid instead. But with no one's attack lowered, Duraludon actually takes a decent amount of damage from Tackle. Better yet, Duraludon's second Max Knuckle hit Peter on the turn it would have died to Sandstorm anyways. If I could just survive one more Max Knuckle, I'd have a great chance of winning. And Uwu did, with 4 HP. Because Sandstorm activates before Leftovers, that was it. If Sandaconda just died one turn earlier, I would have won. For attempt number 14, I used the same strategy as before. There was a lot of luck involved in number 13, I just had to hope some of it would carry over. Gigalith didn't use Stealth Rock, so I used the opportunity to switch safely into Hot Wheels, who activated Flame Body on Flygon right away. Gigalith further abstained from Stealth Rock, so I switched into my Sacrificial Bunny, who's fast and survives Body Press. But of course, my luck ran out. Even though I made it to Duraludon with 4 Pokemon, none of them paralyzed and no Sandstorm to speak of, he still had Gigalith. And that was a huge problem when Max Knuckle raised its attack. Raihan ended the battle with a Breaking Swipe from Duraludon and Sand Tomb from Gigalith. I've got a good strategy now, I just need to make sure it's Duraludon on its own at the end with no Sandstorm active. For attempt number 15, I forgot to hit record and have no footage. Thankfully, it was another loss where I didn't even get to Duraludon. For attempt number 16, it was Uwu and Be Afraid first. Lax Incense had been failing me nearly every attempt, so I changed the items around. Even after multiple playthroughs of both games, I never noticed the ladder and Stow Onside leading to Rocky Helmet. With that added to my arsenal, now Uwu has Leftovers, Be Afraid has Silk Scarf, Hot Wheels has Rocky Helmet, Tembo has Sticky Barb, a risky item but great if used correctly, Bunfire has Heavy Duty Boots, and Peter has Safety Goggles. This battle started out with Gigalith using Body Press, not Stealth Rock. That meant it was time to swap Be Afraid for Hot Wheels. Breaking Swipe activated Flame Body, but it didn't matter because Flygon fell to Rocky Helmet and Gigalith took a huge chunk of damage when it hit Hot Wheels right after. Yeah, I can almost hear everyone yelling at their screen wondering why I never used Rocky Helmet up until this point. In my defense, I'm an idiot. Next, Daedalus used Stealth Rock, Bunfire was paralyzed, and I learned that Earth Power and Sand Tomb bypassed Rocky Helmet. Like I said, idiot. Now though, it was Tembo time. Bunfire was paralyzed again, but Daedalus fell for the trap. It used Body Press on Tembo and took the Sticky Barb. As long as I never touched Daedalus again, Sticky Barb would continue to waste away the Rocky Behemoth. While the strategy was sound, I ended up in a sticky situation with Duraludon versus Uwu. Uwu's faster, but Duraludon hits way too hard. Oddly, it used Stone Edge twice, which hit both times. Maybe one of those will miss in the future. At this point, I was wondering if I'd win before my attempts turned legal. For number 17, I had a rock-solid plan. Uwu and Hot Wheels went up first. Rocky Helmet would pretty much finish off Flagon for me, so I hit it once with Uwu while Hot Wheels went for Daedalus. Hot Wheels got a crit on Daedalus, who retaliated with Stealth Rock. I then went ham on Daedalus with Tackle. Daedalus again messed me up and used Sand Tomb. Hot Wheels was trapped and Flame Body is useless. Sand Tomb's literally the only move that can destroy me early on, so of course he used it. Bunfire replaced Uwu and Flagon got knocked out. Flame Body never activated against Daedalus, so I took a risk and put in Tembo. Sandaconda used Glare because Raihan can't come up with another strategy. But Daedalus used Body Press on Tembo, taking the Barb. Despite my horrible early luck, my brilliant gameplay was carrying me now. However, Sandaconda used Protect on a turn I double targeted it, and that sucked. Daedalus then fell to Sticky Barb, so I sent out Peter to hopefully soften up Duraludon. As long as Sandaconda didn't use Protect and Bunfire actually attacked, I'd be okay. Well, for whatever reason, Duraludon used Max Rockfall for like the first time ever, and Sandaconda used Earth Power. Not a bad outcome, honestly. Hoping it would use Glare, I double targeted Sandaconda again. The risk paid off. The damn thing went down, I had 3 Pokemon, and Duraludon only used 2 Max Knuckle. It was still crazy strong, but at least it wasn't 3. And to top it all off, the sandstorm subsided when Duraludon shrunk back down. Even though Be Afraid fell to an Iron Head, things were looking great. I could do this. I could absolutely do this. Uwu and Peter brought Duraludon under half health, and Stone Edge actually missed. Number 17, here we go, baby. Duraludon used Breaking Swipe next. Bad news for my attack stats, but Breaking Swipe's weak and doesn't KO anybody. Stressing hard as I watched the HP of Duraludon dwindle, my butt clenched when it used Stone Edge on Uwu. A Stone Edge that crazily barely did any damage. This was it, the opening I needed. I clicked A, and fittingly, Uwu dealt the final blow against Duraludon. After 17 attempts, 550 tackles, and more hours than I care to admit, Raihan was finally defeated. An added bonus of this is that my team was super over-leveled for the rest of the game, meaning it should be an all-creamy walk from here. Thanks to the Hail and Victory Road, if you can even call it that, I reached Winden with 2,300 tackles under my belt. Leon was right around the corner, and Peter was quaking in his balls waiting for Dragapult. I just hope there aren't a million delays between now and that fateful battle. First thing I did in Winden was buy all the protein I could and maxed out everyone's attack. Then it was off to the stadium to beat up some children. Uwu was 16 levels ahead of Marnie's Liepard and finished it in 2 hits. No matter my level, the Marnie battle was always just a formality anyways. But something very interesting happened that I didn't notice at first, because at this point all I do is spam the A button. Liepard used Torment. When I kept Uwu in there and it couldn't use Tackle the following turn, it used Struggle instead. I masterfully debated what I should do, eventually deciding to keep the integrity of the run and reset. I saved right before the battle, so it wasn't an issue. It's kind of ironic that one of the easiest battles in the game caused me to restart. I swapped out the next time Liepard used Torment and breezed through the rest of the battle. With Marnie defeated, I was just a skip and a hop away from the next round. Hop somehow made it to this point with only 5 Pokemon. My double 3-shot his double, while I wondered how it was so windy in the stadium. Unless that's why it's called Winden. Anyways, Hot Wheels faced Snorlax, who just so happens to know high horsepower. That was a big whoopsie on my part. I got Hot Wheels out of there and Be Afraid finished the Snorlax easily. Hot Wheels handled Corviknight thanks to Rocky Helmet and Flame Body. Last up, Rillaboom wrecked Bunfire with Max Quake and even managed to KO Uwu before Tembo won the battle. If you're worried that the rest of the challenge will be this easy, just remember that Rose uses all metal Pokemon. I might face Allister in the tournament, and Leon is powerful no matter your level. There was still a ways to go. I then entered the Macrocosmos chapter of the game, which you totally forgot was the name of Rose's organization. I was worried about this section because they use Steel-type Pokemon, but I never planned on being this high level. Between that and Hop healing me up after every battle, I made it to Oleana in no time, just as the game clock hit 30 hours and I crossed 2,400 tackles. Of course, my Wang got me in trouble again. Her first Pokemon is Frostlass, a ghost ice type, so I had to switch from Uwu to Peter. She used Will-O-Wisp, which should be horrible, but Peter's attack is simply too high. Then she used Double Team. Somehow Peter never missed a tackle and managed to KO Frostlass. Bunfire fell to Zarina and is quickly becoming my least valued member of the team. Uwu committed Regicide, then was tasked with my Lotic, who kept healing via Aqua Ring and is just a royal pain, but Uwu pulled through. So Lazzle sprayed gas in Hot Wheels' face and gave it pink eye, but Hot Wheels was equal to the task and brought its HP low before I switched into Tembo. Her final Pokemon is Garbodor, so I kept Tembo in there. Except Garb has Max Quake. Garb's final Gigantamax turn ended Peter, then it was Hot Wheels to hopefully get a burn. That plan didn't work, but Garb did take damage from Rocky Helmet. Uwu was slower and fainted to a Gunk Shot, leaving Be Afraid as my last Pokemon. A crit finished off Garb's remaining HP in one hit. Even with my ill-preparedness, I won because I'm just that good. Then it was straight to the finals. Before all that though, Bidet decided to whet my appetite with a battle on the biggest stage in the entire region, and he brought 4 Pokemon. During this super easy match, I checked and found that yes, the finals are scripted. BD is first, followed by Nessa, then Allister and Pokemon Shield, and finally Raihan. I'd have to go through my 2 toughest opponents if I wanted to claim the title. Oh, and while I was doing all this research, BD used a full restore. One Santa Claus I've had this entire run is that I won't use items in battle unless the opponent does. And then I can only use that same item. That'll be important later. The Bidet finally flushed, the finals truly started, and Nessa stepped up to the plate. Golisopod is up first, and Nessa used Swords Dance twice. Literally the dumbest strategy since Golisopod has emergency exit and switched out before attacking. Seaking used Aqua Ring to be annoying, missed a waterfall, and they got full restore because Nessa's a buttface. Seaking finally hit a Mega Horn for a measly amount of damage, then Waterfall for a similar measly amount of damage. I thought Bunfire's speed would be good against Golisopod. It wasn't. 2 liquidations later and it was KO'd. Uwu cleaned up Golisopod with Peter destroying Barraskewda. As well as this was going, Pelipper said Upella can't win this without a fight. Between Tailwind, Roost, Water Pulse Confusion, and Air Slash Flinching, it took forever to go down. And when it did, I was staring down a Gigantamax Rock type. I went into Peter solely to use full restore on Uwu. See Nessa, not so fun, is it? Anyways, Peter fell and apparently Dreadnought also spread Stealth Rock with G-Max Stone Surge, because why not? Be Afraid does do a decent amount of damage with Tackle though. But with Rock Tomb reducing speed, it couldn't win the day. Hot Wheels then went down in one hit, except it died a hero activating Flame Body. As long as Nessa didn't use a full restore, I would easily win. To add stakes to this, Uwu only had 14 PP left on Tackle. Too much healing and it would run out, forcing a restart. But thanks to the burn, Dreadnought fainted and Nessa was defeated. Heading into Allister, I didn't do too much. Peter was my leadoff hitter with Lax Incense, and Tembo got the Sticky Bar, but that was it. While it doesn't do much damage, Dusknoir has Rock Tomb, which does lower my speed. It followed up with Thunder Punch, then Allister used a full restore. Good news for me since it means I can use one later. Bad news because Dusknoir has pressure, meaning my PP could get drained. It then disabled my Tackle, so I switched into Hot Wheels where Flame Body activated right away. I switched into Be Afraid and held off on full restore. You'll see why in a second. Allister didn't use another full restore, so Dusknoir eventually fell to burn damage. Allister then brought out Chandelure. This is why I held off on full restore, because it knows Will-O-Wisp. Of course, it only ever used Mystical Fire and KO'd Peter, my only way to deal with ghost types, meaning the battle was over at that point. Unlike Raihan, where stubbornness and a bit of strategy can win the battle, the strategy for Allister is to just attack with Pokemon that can hit ghost types. I'll attempt Allister again, but I'm leaning towards just going to get some scabs solely to progress the story. And no, I won't be giving Nintendo more money for DLC. I'll just trade over Miltank and Herdier with a hidden ability for my Sword DLC. It doesn't hurt the integrity of the run. It just saves me $40 and the time it would take to progress the Isle of Armor content to get those 2 Pokemon. And if you're wondering, yes, if not for the expansion pass, this run would be impossible. Now, I didn't know if you knew this, but if you lose at any point in the finals, you pick up against the person you lost to, so that meant no more Nessa. For the rematch, I swapped into Hot Wheels hoping to bait a Thunder Punch. I don't want Peter to face any Pokemon that have physical attacks because that's Colossal's job. Well, Dusknoir used Rock Tomb, so that idea failed. It followed up with Shadow Punch though, and that meant Rocky Helmet damage. But just like with Torment, Dusknoir used Disable and I kept Hot Wheels out there, leading it to using Struggle, which actually hits Ghost-type Pokemon. I didn't immediately end the run because I knew I wasn't going to win the battle. I just got as far as I could before losing, farming XP and gaining knowledge. What I learned is that Chandelure is a beast and Will-O-Wisp is no joke. Also, after losing, you don't actually go back to the Pokemon Center. You just show back up to the front desk of Winden Stadium for some reason. Listen, I have to level with all of you. I've been at this for nearly 32 hours and launched 2,500 tackles. I knew with Raihan I could brute force my way through regardless of my team, the same way I know I can't beat Allister with my current team. You can only get one Rocky helmet the entire game, and while Sticky Barb is quite helpful, getting more relies on the digging duo. This isn't me admitting defeat, this is me acknowledging that it's not fair to rely solely on Peter and a couple of items to win. So I relented, went and caught a Miltank and Herdier in my copy of Pokemon Sword, made sure they had the Scrappy ability and sent them over as reinforcements. With Bessie and Scooby in tow, my third finals match with Allister began. I kept my strategy of using Hot Wheels to store a burn and damage with Rocky Helmet. Then it was just a matter of bouncing between Uwu and Be Afraid until Dusknoir reached low health. Well, I got impatient and just went straight to Bessie. Rock Tomb barely does any damage while my tackle is decent. Then Allister used a full restore, the jerk. Not worst case scenario since I can use one myself later, but it's still annoying. Bessie took care of Dusknoir, meaning Chandelure was next. Scooby took the lead, did big damage and got burned as a result, meaning my third tackle left Chandelure with a sliver of health. Scooby did take the knockout but was left with very little HP. Poltegeist is third and it knows Nasty Plot with weak armor as its ability, which lowers defense and raises speed. After a single Nasty Plot, Poltegeist was able to take half my HP with a Giga Drain. Thanks to its reduced defense though, Peter won. Unlike last time, Cursula doesn't know Curse or any physical moves. In fact, after Dusknoir, none of Allister's 4 remaining Pokemon use a physical move. No matter, cause Cursula has weak armor and Bessie is a beast taking it out in 2 hits. Gengar, of course, was last. I wasted its Gigantamax turns with Hot Wheels Uwu and Tembo using my 1 full restore on Scooby in the process. Gengar's faster than Peter and it took it out before it had a chance to attack. Bessie was next and is faster. Gengar took big damage yet still KO'd the cow. While my normal type Pokemon are immune to Gengar's Stab Shadow Ball, they can't do anything about its Stab Sludge Bomb. But all my worrying was for naught because Scooby ate extra snacks that morning and finished Gengar off. I had defeated Allister and it only took 3 tries, and only one with my full team of Scrappy Boys. The second battle with Raihan is much like the first, except he has 5 Pokemon instead of 4. As poggers as Scooby and Bessie were against Allister, I still one-sided them away and went with my old team. He starts off with a Torkoal that makes it sunny, so Uwu was a terrible starter. I swapped into Bunfire and he used a 1-turn Solar Beam which didn't do a whole lot. And it only did slightly more to Hot Wheels who had to save the day after a yawn. Because Raihan can't cheat by forcing me into a double battle anymore, I'm not as worried this time around. Looking at his team though, I probably won't get too many chances to use Rocky Helmet unless Flygon uses Dragon Claw or Crunch instead of Earthquake. Ultimately Hot Wheels fell and took out Torkoal in the process. Goodra was next so I countered with Uwu. It used Rain Dance and Surf before falling. Turtonator knew only special moves plus Shell Trap, so I sent out Tembo hoping it would prioritize Fire Blast over Shell Trap. It did not and one-shot Tembo. Another Shell Trap awoke Bunfire, but Bunfire avoided the retaliation. I didn't even know you could do that. Even a not very effective Shell Trap still does a ton of damage to Bunfire, but it missed the next one as well while the sun disappeared. I somehow took the KO next turn, which was 50-50 whether it would have 1 HP left or not. 3 Pokemon down and my old friend Flygon was next. It skipped Sandstorm for Earthquake and missed. Lax Incense is back to being awesome, baby. Then it used Sandstorm. Be Afraid dodged another attack and took out Flygon in 3 tackles. Duraludon was Raihan's final Pokemon, except I didn't have much of a buffer. Sure, I had 4 Pokemon, but with the resistance to tackle, it would be Rockruff. Bunfire got wrecked by a max Rockfall. Be Afraid took a max Knuckle like a champ, but couldn't survive another. Duraludon returned to normal to fight Uwu. I had a great chance of winning, especially when I started with a crit and he missed a Stone Edge. Ironically, Uwu has the Soap Scarf and not Lax Incense. Uwu actually managed to dodge back-to-back Stone Edge before getting hit with the 3rd and even surviving a 4th. For whatever reason, he avoided using his better moves until it was time to KO Uwu. A full health Peter was last. I knew Raihan wanted to use a full restore, but the questionable AI saw him skipping it. Unfortunately, my luck ultimately ran out. When Duraludon was 1 tackle away from falling, it knocked Peter out. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it didn't even matter. For the rematch, I led with Bunfire and gave it a Lumberry so it could recover from sleep if Torkoal used Yawn. As long as Torkoal used anything except Body Press, I should be fine. Well, it used Yawn, then Body Press, then Yawn again. The Lumberry worked once, but it wouldn't work again. So I switched into Hot Wheels and he used Yawn again. So I switched back and he thankfully used Solar Beam. I can't risk long-term sleep in this battle, so I switched and guess what? Torkoal used Yawn. When he yawned me again after switching, I switched again with Bunfire taking another Yawn. How much PP does this freaking move have? I finally managed to knock out Torkoal but lost Bunfire in the process. For Turtonator, I went with Uwu, hoping to bait a Fire Blast that missed. Instead, I baited a Sunny Day. Turtonator followed up with Shell Trap and I lost Uwu. My options here are limited. I can keep hitting into Turtonator and hope that it whiffs Shell Trap, or I can keep switching until Shell Trap loses its PP. Whatever the case, I managed to get through Turtonator, then Goodra. Flygon was 4th, and Raihan chose the worst possible move for me, Earthquaking Hot Wheels. Unlike in the gym, Flygon is much scarier here, taking out Peter as well. For attempt number 3, Torkoal started with, I kid you not, 5 yawns in a row before moving to Body Press. Raihan used the full restore and I kept Hot Wheels on the field even though it fell asleep. My stubbornness worked and Hot Wheels woke up just in time to take a Body Press. I wanted to save Hot Wheels for the end and use the full restore when I could, so I swapped into Bunfire. Be Afraid beat Torkoal soon after and I still had all my Pokemon. Peter has the highest attack on my team, so he led off, knowing Turtonator would waste a turn to use Sunny Day. He went for his first Shell Trap, so I used full restore on Hot Wheels. Then it was just a case of switching back and forth until Shell Trap ran out of PP. Well, Raihan got wise to my strategy and used Dragon Pulse. I figured he would use Sunny Day to reinstate the Sunshine the following turn, but nope. He used Shell Trap, but Uwu survived because there was no sun. I took a chance and switched into Tembo, but he of course used Dragon Pulse again. When I decided to attack, he used Shell Trap and ruined Tembo. I swear, the AI is screen peeking. Be Afraid scored the final hit, leading me to Goodra, which is practically useless, hitting a Dry Thunder but missing a Muddy Water. Be Afraid is my best option against Flygon, so out he went. Be Afraid only needed 3 tackles to win and still had HP remaining when it was time for Duraludon. I wanted to save Peter and Hot Wheels for regular Duraludon, so Bunfire went out to take the first hit, a giant Max Rockfall. Then Be Afraid fell to a Max Knuckle. I figured Peter could survive a hit, so she went next. I was right. With its attack up 2 stages, Duraludon returned to normal. It was faster than Peter and won. Hot Wheels was my last hope. The first Stone Edge didn't activate Rocky Helmet or Flame Body, and the second sealed the deal. For attempt number 4, I started with a critical tackle, so Torkoal countered with a critical Body Press. To make things even more magical, if Torkoal had just used Body Press at the right time, it would have knocked itself out. Instead, it used Yawn, and Raihan sprayed it with a full restore. I used Uwu to finish Torkoal off, but it fell asleep in the process. Be Afraid led against Turtonator, who predictably used Sunny Day. His MO seems to be Sunny Day, then Shell Trap, and Dragon Pulse when I get cute. So I tried to put Tembo in the active whenever he used Dragon Pulse. Well, my powers of prediction failed me and I hit into Turtonator with the Sun and Shell Trap active. Thankfully, Shell Trap missed. I kept Tembo out there and he used Sunny Day. I couldn't remember how many Shell Traps were left, so I attacked. That was a big oopsie because Tembo got one-shot. I misclicked and sent out Uwu and watched it fall due to my mistake. The bunny then avenged the sheep. Be Afraid is always the choice for Flygon. 3 tackles and it was done. I forgot I hadn't faced Goodra yet, it's so forgettable. It washed away the Sandstorm with Rain Dance, then a couple of critical tackles plus 1 regular tackle and Goodra was gone, leaving Duraludon. Bunfire lost to a Max Rockfall, Hot Wheels survived a Max Rockfall on my full restore turn, then it fell to a Max Knuckle. Duraludon only had 1 stage attack up. It was all up to Peter and Be Afraid. It was all up to Be Afraid. Body Press does very little to Be Afraid, while my tackle does more. In a head-to-head fight, Be Afraid wins. As long as nothing went screwy, Raihan would be defeated. Well, the only thing that went screwy is Duraludon missed a Body Press. Thanks to Be Afraid's ability, I won the battle. Not so great without your stupid double battles, are you, Raihan? After 33 hours and 2,600 tackles, it was time for Leon. I just hope nothing interrupts the battle and takes me on a long side quest. Yeah, instead of a fun battle against Leon, I got hit by Rose crashing out. Since his team is all high-level metal types, this wouldn't be easy. His Escavalier used Swords Dance, then got Mega Horny with my sheep, which somehow survived after 2 hits before dodging a third. The 4th Mega Horn took out Uwu, so it was Hot Wheels' turn. Well, Escavalier knew Drill Run and one-shot Hot Wheels, but Burn and Rocky Helmet finished it off. At this point, we were tied on Pokemon, and I thought I had a chance. Well, he went with Ferrothorn next, and I chose Be Afraid. Of course, Ferrothorn has Iron Barbs, meaning that I'll lose most of my HP hitting into it. Rose then spammed Curse until Tackle did a sliver of damage, meaning that I had to rethink my strategy for the rematch. I gave Rose a bunch of money, got kicked back to Winden, and flew to Hammerlock for Rose battle number 2. He used the same strategy with his Cavalier. Swords Dance, then Mega Horn. Except this time Uwu fell to 2 Mega Horn instead of 4. Tembo with the Sticky Barb was next. He one-shot Tembo with Drill Run but took the Sticky Barb. Bunfire proved its uselessness and got bodied by a Drill Run. Be Afraid was able to win, so that meant Ferrothorn. I sent out Hot Wheels and hoped for the best. The second body press from Ferrothorn activated Flame Body, but I only had 2 Pokemon left, meaning things were looking Grimmsnarl. Eventually, Ferrothorn fell and Rose sent out Klinklang. Compared to his first 2 Pokemon, Klinklang is an absolute pushover, going down super easily to Be Afraid. Berserker is also a weakling, but it got a lucky crit that ended the battle. I had no idea going into this battle that Ferrothorn would be such a run-ender. So for attempt number 3, everyone was beefier. Maybe not beefy enough, but I was tired of knocking out Sigilif in the wild area. It was time to prune this Rose. Uwu whittled his Cavalier down to less than half health, Bunfire got one shot because of a Swords Dance drill run, and Be Afraid was able to finish the job, barely taking any damage in return. I sent out Sticky Barb Tembo against Ferrothorn. It worked immediately, so I went into Hot Wheels. When Ferrothorn started using Curse, I got worried. After one more Curse, I returned Hot Wheels and let Tembo get knocked out. Because of Ferrothorn's low speed, victory was assured with Peter. Be Afraid got Klinklang and handled it with ease. Berserker was burned by Hot Wheels but did far too much damage with Iron Head before getting KO'd by Peter. That left Rose's Copperaja to face my 3 remaining damaged Pokemon. I'm not ashamed to admit that I forgot Copperaja can Gigantamax in this battle. Kinda reckless given the fact that the world outside is ending. If not for the Gigantamax, I'm confident I would have won. With it, I lost. Ahead of attempt number 4, many more wild Pokemon fell. Be Afraid was going to lead me off this time, and Bunfire had a Focus Sash, so maybe it could do more than nothing. For whatever reason, Rose skipped Swords Dance turn 1 and went with Iron Head. But turn 2 was Swords Dance. He kept using Iron Head instead of Megahorn, giving Be Afraid the win. If Be Afraid had a Silk Scarf, I'd have been in much better shape, but oh well. Tembo was out first against Ferrothorn. It used Body Press right away and took the Sticky Barb, so I switched into Hot Wheels. Between Rocky Helmet and Sticky Barb, Ferrothorn went down without taking anybody with it. Berserker using Screech is the worst, but somehow Bunfire managed to do something and help me get to Copperaja. 3 attacks in though, it was just Uwu left. Heavy Slam does too much damage and I lost, but it was close. No more leveling, Rose was going down. For attempt number 5, Be Afraid got the Silk Scarf, Uwu got leftovers. To add a little bit of pressure to this battle, I was 30 tackles away from 3,000. I wanted to avoid that number. Rose doesn't deserve the milestone, Eternatus does. Escavalier still took 5 hits to fall but never used a Swords Dance attack. Tembo did its Sticky Barb thing against Ferrothorn but fell in the process because it used Curse first. I immediately went into Hot Wheels, who got Flame Body to activate right away. From then, nobody touched Ferrothorn as it slowly melted like a Wicked Witch while I repeatedly switched. Uwu beat Klinklang again and was in much better shape thanks to leftovers. Screech is a massive problem, so I was hoping for the quickest of victories, and I got it. Berserker went down in 4 hits and never used Screech. This was the run. Bunfire then survived with 1 hit point thanks to Focus Sash, critical hit be damned. Now I'd have 3 Pokemon to face a regular-sized Metal Elephant. But I wouldn't even need all of them because Hot Wheels is Flame Body activated. Better yet, I won with my tackle counter at 2,998. Suck it, Rose. Right after, regular Eternatus was fairly easy to beat. It took 3 tackles, which meant I'd officially crossed the 3,000 mark. Mega Eternatus went down just as easily thanks to some help from my doggo friends. After 36 hours and just over 3,000 tackles, that meant it was finally time for Leon. And I was going to have a champion time, I just didn't know how many times it would take to win. For attempt number 1, I didn't do anything fancy. I just won it and hoped for the best. All I knew is that Peter would have to face Dragapult. Beyond that, who knows? Well, disaster struck immediately. Turns out Leon has 2 Ghost-type Pokemon and he starts out with one of them. And Aegislash knows Sacred Sword, which is super effective and easily 2-shots Peter. Uh-oh. Hot Wheels went in to deal with Aegislash and finally activated Flame Body. But Leon used a full restore and ruined everything, meaning attempt number 1 would end in a humiliating defeat. I honestly don't know if it's possible to win without another scrappy Pokemon, so that meant Bunfire, you're out, and Stoutland, you're in. Even with this team though, I doubted I'd win anytime soon. For attempt number 2, I wasn't messing around. I spent hours grinding and still only wound up in the 70s with Be Afraid at level 80. I knew Leon would be nearly impossible even with the perfect run. He has 6 Pokemon, so sacrificing someone like Tembo just so I can use Sticky Barb wasn't exactly a winning strategy. Looking at his insanely powerful team, I knew I'd need a layup. The only possible candidates were Mr. Ryman and Tellian, but they had such diverse move pools that nothing was guaranteed. And I figured the only way to beat Gigantamax Charizard was letting dudes take a few superpowered hits, then hoping that Hot Wheels can somehow get the job done. Aegislash used King Shield and dropped my attack right off the Crobat. Then it was a Sacred Sword because why not? Oh, and then back to King Shield. I swapped into Hot Wheels and got Flame Body to activate, giving me an opening. If the math could just work perfectly, and it did. Aegislash went down. Instead of Dragapult, he went with Haxorus. It was Be Afraid time. Thanks to Be Afraid's ability and the fact that I was 17 levels higher, Earthquake did little damage and I was able to tackle away half of Haxorus's health. I wouldn't call Haxorus a layup, but it was much easier than anticipated. Now it was Mr. Rime time. All 4 of Leon's remaining Pokemon use special attacks, so most of my tried and true strategies were out the window. It was just going to be luck and Forest Gumption that won me this thing. Teeter Dance is guaranteed confusion, Tembo hit itself in the face, and Thunderbolt paralyzed me. So things weren't going great. And just as things were looking up, Leon used a full restore. I couldn't waste it on Tembo, meaning it was time for Uwu. With Charizard being Leon's final Pokemon, Uwu and Be Afraid would be terrible options due to their abilities, so using them now was my best bet. Finally, Leon sent out Dragapult. Thanks to a lax Incense dodge, Peter got Dragapult down low enough for Scooby to finish the job. Be Afraid was my strongest Pokemon and I needed a quick win against Inteleon, so the choice was simple. Well, turns out Inteleon's Snipe Shout is actually crazy powerful and Be Afraid went down. Uwu cleaned up the rest, so that meant Charizard. There wasn't a great candidate for the full restore, but I figured Scooby may as well get it while I leave Uwu on the field to get destroyed. Well, for whatever reason, Leon passed on the best possible move for Charizard turn 1, opting for a turn 2 G-Max Wildfire instead. At worst, Hot Wheels would face a normal-sized Charizard. Scooby got burned from Flamethrower and the G-Max Wildfire Flames finished it off. It was time for my damaged Hot Wheels. Leon led with a super effective Ancient Power, but didn't get the stat boost. Another Ancient Power, another no stat boost. This was it, I had a chance. Hot Wheels barely survived another Ancient Power, launched a tackle, and... yeah, I just failed to knock it out. That much was the difference between winning and losing. If I just saved the full restore for Hot Wheels at the end, I would have won. Leon's strategy for attempt number 3 wasn't a champion time. He used King Shield first, then Sacred Sword. I was ready for it this time though. Flame Body activated on the first try, meaning I was in business. It was just another case of the math needing to line up, so the full restore skipped Aegislash. Well, he used King Shield and messed everything up. But then something wonderful happened. He skipped out on using full restore. The bad news is that Peter had 2 HP left and I'd need her to beat Dragapult. Haxorus went down in 2 hits and Tembo was sent out to face Mr. Rime again. Teeter Dance worked perfectly for Leon, but Thunderbolt missed Paralysis and I even got a crit on my first tackle. Then the second Thunderbolt missed. I was actually excited when Tembo left Mr. Rime with a sliver of health because it created the perfect full restore scenario. But then Leon didn't use one. Peter and Scooby were heavily damaged at this point and unfortunately couldn't get the job done. I'd lost the rematch without ever getting to Charizard. In my 4th attempt against Leon, Flame Body didn't activate against Aegislash, the first Sacred Sword, or even the 2nd, the 3rd, or the 4th. Because of that, I lost both Peter and Scooby along the way, dooming me without even taking a knockout. Attempt number 5, Leon led with Sacred Sword before using King Shield. Of course, he got a critical hit and no Flame Body activation. Then on the attack that felled Hot Wheels, Flame Body finally activated. The math was super sketchy for full restore, but it actually worked out perfectly for me. My chances against Charizard were super low, but getting there was super high. I decided to try Uwu against Mr. Rime in case it made a difference. Well, Uwu is faster, and Leon avoided Teeter Dance, but Psychic left me with 4 HP after 3 hits. He used a full restore and won, so I sent out Be Afraid to finish it off, who I'm thinking might be the smartest option for both Haxorus and Mr. Rime going forward. Peter and Scooby beat Dragapult, Tembo lost to Inteleon, and I only had 2 Pokemon left for Charizard, who destroyed them easily. Not only do I need Flame Body to activate turn 1 against Aegislash, I also need Hot Wheels for Charizard. If those 2 things happen, I will win. Attempt number 6 happened 40 hours into the challenge and I was just shy of 3,300 tackles. I did a bit of research and found that Choice Band is near the professor's house, which makes Scooby superpowered and I'm an idiot for not getting it much earlier in the run. I could have spent a few hours catching Trubbish hoping to find more Soat Scarf, but I was confident Choice Band was the missing piece. Leon went back to his turn 1 King Shield strategy, so that meant Hot Wheels. Well, everything went to crap almost immediately. No Flame Body, I switched back into Scooby at the worst time, I forgot to switch back into Hot Wheels at the best time, and Choice Band doesn't make as much of a difference as I thought. But then something wondrous happened. Peter got a critical hit on Aegislash and finished it off. Losing Scooby sucked, but as long as Peter could handle Leon's Dragapult, I'd be fine. But then something odd happened. For the previous 5 attempts, Be Afraid knocked out Haxorus in 2 tackles. This time it lived after 2 tackles and Leon used the full restore. Then it fell to 2 tackles. Be Afraid was lower than I'd hoped for Mr. Rime, but I was locked into this strategy. Well, I forgot about Be Afraid's weakness to Psychic and it went down. Uwu overcame confusion and finished the job, and I still had a full restore at my disposal. In what was a very close back and forth battle, Peter defeated Dragapult. Tembo went out and faced Inteleon. I was in such great shape, nothing could ruin this run. Inteleon kept using Tearful Look instead of something good to lower my attack, and Tembo ended up winning. That left me with 4 Pokemon and Leon with 1. This was definitely it. Victory was within my reach. Uwu went out first and did a huge chunk of damage because Leon is an idiot and used Max Airstream and Max Rockfall instead of G-Max Wildfire, literally the best attack any of his Pokemon possess. Max Rockfall raised a Sandstorm because, again, Leon's an idiot, so I just kept sending out everyone but Hot Wheels. With a sliver of health left on Charizard, my last Pokemon went out. It was all fairly anticlimactic, but I launched my final tackle, defeating Leon and ending the run. All in all, it took me 3,310 tackles, give or take, and 1 minute shy of 40 hours. If it wasn't for my Wang and if I wasn't so stubborn, it wouldn't have taken nearly as long. I felt bad about ditching Bunfire at the last minute, but it had to be done. Bunfire sucked and I needed Scooby. So is it possible to beat Pokemon Shield using only Tackle? Definitely, it's just not easy or particularly fun. And it will require the expansion pass, as you'll have to catch at least a Miltank on the Isle of Armor. And you'll probably want 2 ability patches so Pangoro and Stoutland can get scrappy. Raihan offered up the biggest challenge, taking 17 attempts with Allister at 9 and Leon at 6. You're probably wondering how I accurately kept track of tackles used in this challenge. Well, first off, accurately might not be the correct word. I did, however, use complex mathematics to keep a running tally. See, what I did is look at my PP. Before healing at a Pokemon Center, I'd count how much PP had been subtracted from the max total. It was an imperfect system to be sure, but overall I'd say I was within the ballpark of what the real number ended up being. To end the video, I just have one very important thing to say. Something that could alter the course of everything you know. Heed these words.